Tessa was 12, and most days she walked through life like any other kid. Her sneakers hit the pavement of her small town's quiet streets, the morning sun casting long shadows from the buildings as she made her way to the local cafe. It was the one place where she could sit for a while, think, and enjoy her one true indulgence: a cup of black coffee. Sure, she wasn't old enough to drink coffee according to the rules, but in her small town, everyone knew everyone, and she'd been sneaking sips for years. The rich bitterness always reminded her that life wasn't as simple as it seemed. This morning, though, something was different. As she passed the alley that led to the back of the cafe, she felt an odd shift in the air. It wasn't the usual cool breeze. No, this felt wrong. Tessa stopped mid-step and turned, narrowing her eyes at the dark shape that loomed by the dumpster. It didn't belong there. The figure was too still, too irregular. The first thing Tessa noticed was the flickering, the figure's shape distorted like a glitch in the fabric of reality itself. It was as though it was trying to be something it wasn't, a blur between solid and translucent. When it noticed her gaze, the distortion grew sharper, snapping into focus with an unnerving clarity. The creature before her wasn't human. It wasn't even close. It had the build of a person, yet its body seemed to shimmer like liquid metal, constantly shifting in color and texture. A smooth, silvery surface covered it, but beneath that skin, Tessa swore she could see stars' little galaxies spiraling within its form, as if the creature itself was a vessel for an entire cosmos. Its eyes were what sent a chill down Tessa's spine, though they were large, far too large for any human, and glowing in colors that didn't exist on Earth. They flickered in patterns, like an ancient code meant only for the most evolved minds to understand. The alien blinked, and a strange, garbled voice filled the space between them, like two frequencies clashing and forming a coherent sound in her mind. "I've been waiting for you," it said. Tessa froze. She had no idea how to react. The idea that something from beyond her wildest imagination was standing right in front of her was overwhelming. But instead of panic, her mind raced with questions, each more bizarre than the last. "Why? Why me?" she stammered. The alien didn't answer immediately. Its massive eyes studied her, its body flickering like a firefly caught in the night. "Because you are the one who will listen," it said. "You are the one who is ready." Before Tessa could respond, the alien extended one impossibly long arm, and with a flick of its wrist, reality seemed to twist. The alley around them shimmered and faded. Tessa blinked, and suddenly, she was no longer standing in front of the cafe. She was inside it. The cafe had always felt like a second home to her. But now, with the alien beside her, it felt different. The walls flickered, the tables twisted in and out of existence, and the coffee machines hummed with an unnatural vibration. It was as if the entire building was a part of the alien's strange existence. Without a word, the creature sat down across from her at an empty table, its shifting body making it seem like the space itself was warping around them. Tessa sat down too, her heart pounding, unsure whether to run or sit tight. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. The air in the cafe buzzed with an odd, electric tension. Tessa, still in disbelief, watched as the alien, this being from beyond the stars, produced a strange, shimmering mug from thin air. It was like no cup she had ever seen. It wasn't made of ceramic or glass, but of some material that seemed to bend and twist the light around it. The surface flickered between transparency and opacity, like a living thing. The alien's eyes locked onto hers, its gaze intense but devoid of any malice. "I've heard much about your species," it said. Its voice, though otherworldly, was oddly comforting. I have watched your kind for millennia. You are the most fascinating of all. Your thirst for knowledge, your insatiable curiosity, it is admirable. Tessa's mouth went dry. Why are you here? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The alien's expression, or at least the part of it that resembled an expression, shifted. It was a subtle movement, but enough to send a shiver down her spine. To drink coffee, it said, a human ritual. I have studied it, but never experienced it myself. The alien then poured something from its strange mug into a second, equally bizarre cup in front of Tessa. The liquid wasn't black like the coffee she knew. It was iridescent, swirling with colors that defied logic: violet, silver, and a shade of blue that was almost impossible to comprehend. The coffee itself looked like it was alive, rippling with patterns that seemed to move on their own. Tessa hesitated, unsure if she should drink from it. Is it safe? She asked, raising an eyebrow. The alien made a sound, a soft vibration that resonated through the table. It is not safe in your terms, it replied, its voice playful, but it will expand your mind, allow you to understand what cannot be understood. With that, the alien lifted its own cup and took a sip. The liquid rippled like liquid mercury, and as the alien drank, Tessa felt the temperature in the room drop. A strange energy filled the air around them, and she could feel her senses sharpening, her mind becoming clearer. She didn't understand it, but there was something undeniably strange and powerful about the experience. The alien looked at her, its eyes glowing even brighter. Do you understand now? Tessa's heart raced, but she nodded slowly. It was as though the very air around her had come alive. What is happening? She asked, her voice shaky. You are starting to see, the alien said, almost with a smile. You are starting to see the universe as it truly is, the way I see it. Tessa's mind buzzed with questions, each one more bizarre than the last, but she couldn't stop herself from taking a sip from her own strange mug. As soon as the liquid hit her tongue, her body went cold. A sudden, overwhelming rush of knowledge surged through her fragments of memories. Visions of distant galaxies, the birth of stars, the death of worlds. It all flooded her mind, and for a brief moment, Tessa felt herself becoming something more than just a 12-year-old girl from a small town. Tessa felt herself drifting in and out of consciousness. It wasn't like sleep. It wasn't like a dream. It was as though the very fabric of reality was slipping through her fingers, and she was beginning to understand what lay beneath it. She blinked, trying to hold on to something, anything that felt solid and real, but the more she tried, the more it all began to shift. The cafe, once a familiar space, now seemed like a warped reflection in a cracked mirror. The walls were bending, curving, and stretching as if the very air was alive. The tables and chairs pulsated in time with the alien's strange presence, and the fluorescent lights above flickered like dying stars. Tessa could hear a hum, a frequency that she could feel deep inside her bones, vibrating through her like a tuning fork. The alien watched her closely, its unblinking eyes studying her every reaction. It is happening, it said softly, as if speaking to itself more than her. The boundaries are thinning. You are no longer just human. Tessa's heart raced. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The alien didn't answer immediately. It raised its hand, and as it moved, the space around it twisted. The walls bent inward, folding like paper in the wind. Tessa gasped as the space she had known, the cafe, the very ground beneath her feet, seemed to stretch and warp. A door appeared where there hadn't been one before, glowing with an eerie light. You were beginning to see the true nature of the universe, the alien said, its voice calm. What you perceive as solid, as constant, is merely a temporary illusion. Reality is far more fluid, far more complex than you could ever imagine. Tessa's breath caught in her throat as she stepped forward, drawn toward the glowing door. Her mind buzzed with 1,000 questions, but none of them made sense anymore. She couldn't understand the answers. She could only feel the pull of something greater than herself. The alien, who was once an unimaginable entity, now seemed like a guide and instructor in a school she hadn't known existed. The air around them began to ripple, and Tessa realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just a place, it was an intersection, a point where countless realities converged. The alien's presence seemed to be anchoring them in this moment, and as Tessa took another step forward, she felt as though she was stepping into a different reality entirely. "Where are we going?" Tessa asked, her voice shaking, but her curiosity overriding her fear. The alien did not speak. Instead, it extended its hand, a subtle motion inviting her to follow. Tessa hesitated for only a moment, but that hesitation was enough to break the illusion. The room twisted again, this time with an intensity that left Tessa breathless. She was no longer in the cafe. She wasn't anywhere she had ever known. The alien led her through a void, a space where the stars themselves seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The ground beneath them was not solid, but rather a liquid-like substance that shifted and reshaped itself as they moved. They were walking on a surface that didn't belong to any world she knew, a place outside of time, outside of the constraints of space. "This is the realm between realms," the alien said, its voice echoing in Tessa's mind, "where all possibilities exist simultaneously, where all realities touch." Tessa's mind struggled to grasp the enormity of what was happening. She was walking alongside a being that defied everything she had ever learned. The universe was not just a place she lived in. It was a network, a living organism, and she was now part of it. Tessa's senses were overloaded. She could feel the space around her stretching infinitely, her thoughts mingling with the flickering realities. It was as if every question she had ever asked about the universe was being answered at once. But the answers were so vast and overwhelming that they made her head spin. Her breath quickened as she struggled to keep up with the flow of information surging through her mind. The alien didn't speak, but Tessa could feel its presence guiding her, anchoring her in the chaos of existence. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating, like being at the edge of a precipice, looking out into an abyss that was both endless and full of promise. As they moved through the strange, liquid-like surface, Tessa began to notice something. The alien, this being from beyond the stars, wasn't just a guide, it was a part of the very fabric of this place. It wasn't something she could see, but something she could feel. It was as if its essence was woven into the threads of reality itself. "Why are you showing me this?" Tessa asked, her voice trembling. The alien stopped and turned to face her, its glowing eyes flickering like distant stars. "Because you are ready," it said, its voice resonating in her mind with a deep, ancient wisdom. "You are ready to see the truth of the universe, to understand its deepest workings." Tessa looked around, taking in the shifting landscape, the endless possibilities that seemed to stretch out before her. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What is this place? Where are we?" The alien's eyes softened, and for a moment, Tessa could see a flicker of something more, something almost human in its gaze. "This is the heart of creation," it said, "the place where all things are born, and you, Tessa, are part of it now. You are no longer just a child. You are a witness to the birth of everything." Tessa's mind raced. "But I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about the universe. Why me? The alien's expression shifted again, its form rippling as it considered her words. You are a child, yes, it said. But you are also the first human to truly see. The first to understand that your kind, your species are not insignificant. You are a part of something much greater, much older. You are not just earthlings. You are a part of the cosmic dance. As the alien spoke, Tessa felt her mind expanding, stretching beyond its physical limits. She was no longer confined to her human body. She was everywhere. She could feel the stars being born, the galaxies swirling in the void, the ancient pulse of the universe itself. And for the first time, Tessa understood. Tessa felt herself being drawn deeper into the void, where time seemed to slow and stretch in ways she couldn't grasp. Her mind was no longer confined to the limits of her human body, but rather became an extension of the very fabric of existence. She could feel it now, the pulse of the universe, the heartbeat of reality itself. It thrummed in her chest, vibrating through her bones, and she realized, with a shiver, that she was part of it. She was no longer just a girl from a quiet neighborhood, no longer just human. She had transcended something fundamental, and she didn't even know how to begin to comprehend what that meant. The alien's presence beside her was a constant, a steady force anchoring her to something solid. It watched her with those unblinking, glowing eyes, as though waiting for her to understand the enormity of the truth that had just been revealed to her. But how could she? How could she possibly make sense of the impossible? You're still grasping at the edges, the alien said softly, almost as if speaking to itself, its voice reverberating through her mind like a whispered song. I can see the questions swirling in your head, Tessa, the doubt, the fear. But the truth is, it has always been here, right in front of you. You simply weren't ready to see. Tessa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. How could she speak when everything she had ever known was crumbling around her, replaced by something far beyond her comprehension? The alien extended a long, delicate hand, and for a moment, Tessa thought she saw the stars themselves reflected in its skin. It was an invitation, but it was also a challenge. A challenge to step beyond the world she had known, to embrace something greater. You were chosen, the alien continued, its voice becoming more insistent, more powerful. Not by chance, not by accident. Your kind has always been on the edge of something extraordinary. But you, Tessa, you are the catalyst. You are the key. The air around her grew thick with an otherworldly energy, and the boundaries of the cafe, of everything she had once known, faded. It was as if reality itself was starting to dissolve, leaving behind only the alien and herself. The space was no longer just a room. It was an intersection of countless dimensions, and she could see them all, swirling and twisting together. The possibilities were infinite. The choices were endless. But why me? She asked, her voice shaking as she struggled to process the overwhelming flood of thoughts. Why am I the one? The alien looked down at her, its gaze softening with something she couldn't quite name, perhaps empathy, perhaps a flicker of something ancient. Because you are human, it said simply. You possess the potential that others lack, the potential to break free from the chains of limitation, to transcend the very nature of your existence. Tessa's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to ask more, to demand answers to the millions of questions racing through her mind, but the alien's presence was overwhelming. It was as though its very being was speaking directly to her soul, bypassing the need for words. She understood without understanding, felt the truth in the deepest recesses of her being. The room around her began to warp once again, the walls stretching and twisting like liquid. The stars outside flickered in and out of existence, but this time, Tessa felt something stirring deep within her. It wasn't fear, it wasn't confusion, it was power. A raw, untapped potential she had never imagined. She had always felt small, insignificant, but now she knew she was anything but. She was a part of something cosmic, something eternal. The alien extended its hand further, beckoning her forward. "You are ready, Tessa," it said. "Will you accept your place among the stars?" Tessa stared at its hand, the tendrils of reality itself stretching out in front of her. She knew that what the alien was offering was more than just knowledge. It was a transformation, a chance to evolve beyond human limitations, to embrace something incomprehensible, something infinite. The pull was undeniable. The universe itself seemed to hum with the promise of what lay beyond. She could feel it in her chest, in her mind, in her soul. "Yes," she whispered, her voice steady now, strong. "I'll join you." And in that moment, everything changed. The walls of the cafe exploded outward, and she found herself standing in a vast expanse of stars. The universe stretched out before her, vast and infinite, and she stood at the center of it all. The alien was beside her, no longer just a guide, but a companion, a fellow traveler on the journey that had just begun. The stars pulsed around them, and Tessa could feel herself becoming one with them, her body merging with the energy of the cosmos. She was no longer a simple human girl. She was something more, something eternal, something part of the very fabric of existence itself. As she looked around, she saw the infinite possibilities that awaited her. The universe was vast, but she was no longer afraid. She was part of it, a witness to the birth of stars, to the endless cycles of creation and destruction. The cosmic dance was hers to join, hers to lead. The alien smiled at her, its glowing eyes full of pride, full of understanding. "Welcome, Tessa. Welcome to the true reality." And as the stars enveloped her, she knew that she was no longer bound by the rules of the world she had once known. She was free to shape the future, to transcend everything that had once held her back. The universe was hers, and she was ready to embrace it. Tessa felt her very being shifting, unraveling, and remaking itself in ways she couldn't comprehend. She had crossed a threshold, no longer a simple girl from Earth, but now part of something far greater. The alien beside her was no longer just a guide, but a fellow traveler in the vast cosmic sea. It spoke to her in a language older than time itself, but she understood every word, every syllable. "You see now, don't you?" The alien's voice resonated in her mind, the words cascading like a waterfall of knowledge. "You are no longer bound by the limitations of your past. You are free to choose the path of creation or destruction, to shape the fabric of reality itself." Tessa looked round, taking in the view of countless stars, planets, and swirling nebulas. The universe stretched out before her, its infinite expanse filled with potential. But as she looked closer, she saw the dark spaces between the stars, places where the light had been swallowed, where nothingness existed. They were not empty, not truly. They were the hidden corners of the cosmos, where the unknown waited. Can I shape all of this?" Tessa asked, her voice small, tentative. The alien smiled, a gesture that felt both ancient and wise. "Yes, Tessa. You are part of the cosmic dance now. You can create, destroy, and reshape reality as you see fit. But with great power comes great responsibility. The universe is not something to be taken lightly." Tessa nodded, feeling the weight of the words settle deep within her. She understood now this wasn't just about knowledge. It was about becoming one with the universe, understanding its intricacies, its ebbs and flows. She was no longer an observer. She was a creator, a shaper of destiny. But with that power came choices that could alter the very course of existence. Would she use her newfound abilities for good? Or would she be tempted by the dark allure of destruction? The stars around her flickered, responding to her thoughts, as though the universe itself was waiting for her next move. Tessa took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling the power surge through her, mingling with the very fabric of the cosmos. Tessa stood on the precipice of existence itself, the weight of the infinite cosmos pressing against her. Every thought she had, every flicker of emotion, seemed to send ripples through the stars around her. She was no longer just a child. She was becoming something else, something far beyond what she could ever have imagined. The alien beside her, its glowing eyes watching her with ancient wisdom, was no longer just a mentor. It was her companion, her guide, but also a reflection of the path she was about to choose. Creation and destruction. The alien's voice reverberated through her mind, as if its words were written in the very air around them. These are the twin forces that govern the universe. They are the heartbeat of all that exists. You must decide, Tessa. Will you create a new world, a better one? Or will you let the darkness within you take root and spread? Tessa looked around, her eyes narrowing as she saw the vast expanse of stars before her. The beauty was undeniable, but so was the vast emptiness between them. The endless voids, the silent stretches of nothingness, called to her whispering promises of unimaginable power. She could feel them tugging at her, urging her to reach out, to take control of what lay before her. "I don't know what to choose," she said quietly, her voice trembling for the first time in what felt like an eternity. The alien's gaze softened. "You are not expected to know," it said. "The answer lies not in the universe, but in you. You are the key, Tessa. The power of creation is not something to be taken lightly. It is a gift, but also a burden." Tessa clenched her fists, the energy of the cosmos swirling around her like a storm. She had always felt small, insignificant. But now, she could feel the pulse of the universe inside her, like a second heartbeat. She was no longer powerless. She was becoming something more. Her gaze turned toward the dark stretches of space, the endless voids that seemed to hum with an eerie energy. She could feel the darkness inside her, lurking beneath the surface, pulling at her like a silent predator. It was tempting, seductive. The power to shape the universe, to bend reality to her will, it was within her reach. All she had to do was give in. But something inside her resisted. Wasn't this exactly what had happened to the beings before her? The ones who had fallen to the darkness, consumed by their own thirst for power. She thought of Earth, of the world she had come from, and something inside her snapped into focus. "I want to create," she said, her voice steadier now, the words carrying a weight that surprised even her. "I want to make something beautiful. I want to build a world that's full of light, not darkness." The alien nodded slowly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. "Then you must understand, Tessa, that creation is not without its sacrifices. You cannot create without destroying something. The forces of the universe must always balance." The stars around her swirled, the galaxies spinning in a cosmic dance that seemed to pulse with new life. She could feel herself becoming one with it, her thoughts aligning with the very structure of the cosmos. And then, as if guided by an unseen hand, Tessa extended her arms, her fingers glowing with a soft, ethereal light. The alien watched, silent, as the universe responded to her touch. Stars shifted, new worlds formed, and the very fabric of reality seemed to bend and twist in response. She could feel her power, but it was not overwhelming. It was fluid, harmonious. She wasn't controlling it, she was becoming it. A single star formed in front of her, pulsing with energy. It was small at first, but it grew, slowly at first, then rapidly. Tessa watched, fascinated, as the star expanded, its light brightening the dark expanse of space. Slowly, the star began to solidify, shaping itself into a planet, its surface rippling with oceans, mountains, and vast forests. "I did it," she whispered in awe, her voice filled with wonder. The alien beside her did not speak, but there was a quiet pride in its gaze. It understood, it knew this was just the beginning. The creation of one world was only the start of a far larger journey. "You have chosen Tessa," the alien said, its voice soft and ancient. "But remember, every creation comes with a cost. Every light casts a shadow. You are no longer just human. You are part of something much greater now. You must be ready for what comes next." Tessa nodded, feeling a deep sense of understanding settle over her. She was ready. The universe was vast, and there was so much more to do, so much more to create. The journey ahead would be long and full of challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She was no longer just a girl from Earth. She was a creator, and the universe would never be the same again. Tessa's new world spun before her, a shimmering globe of life and light. But as it rotated, she began to feel the subtle tremors of something far darker stirring beneath the surface. The stars themselves seemed to flicker with an unsettling energy, as though they were watching her every move. The alien beside her remained silent, but Tessa could feel its presence more acutely than ever. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice low, filled with uncertainty. The alien turned toward her, its glowing eyes reflecting the galaxies they had just created. "Now," it said slowly, "you must learn to balance the forces within you. Creation is only one side of the coin, destruction is the other. And though you have created, you have also awakened the forces of chaos. The very things that must be contained if your creation is to survive." Tessa's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't considered this. She had been so caught up in the beauty of her newfound power, in the act of creation, that she had forgotten the other side of the equation, the darkness, the inevitable entropy that came with every new life. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her responsibility settle onto her shoulders. The universe, once a thing of endless possibility, now seemed like a fragile thread. She could feel the tension in the air, the struggle between the forces of light and darkness, creation and destruction. They were at war, battling for supremacy in the depths of her soul. The alien's voice broke through her thoughts. "You have the power, Tessa. But remember, power without control is dangerous. You must learn to master it, or the darkness will consume all that you have created." The warning hung heavy in the air, and Tessa knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. The journey of creation was long and fraught with danger, and she had no choice but to continue forward, learning from her mistakes, understanding the delicate balance of the universe. But for now, she would take a step back and watch as her world continued to grow. She would nurture it, protect it, and guide it toward a future where light would outshine the darkness. Tessa stood at the edge of her creation, watching as her new world blossomed before her. The land was lush, the oceans teeming with life, and the sky sparkled with the brilliance of new stars. It was everything she had hoped for, a paradise, a testament to the power of creation. But there was something wrong. The air around her crackled with an unsettling energy, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. She could feel it, a subtle shift in the fabric of reality. a ripple of disturbance that threatened to undo everything she had just built. The alien stood silently by her side, its gaze unwavering. "This is the first test," the alien said, its voice filled with a quiet urgency. "Your creation is not yet complete. The darkness is stirring." Tessa turned, eyes wide with panic. "What do you mean, what darkness?" The alien gestured toward the horizon, where the stars were beginning to flicker and fade. The light of her world, so bright just moments before, was now dimming, as if being swallowed by a greater, unseen force. "You have created light," the alien said, "but darkness is always waiting, always ready to claim what has been made." Tessa's pulse quickened. "How do I stop it? How do I keep it from consuming everything?" The alien's eyes softened. "By mastering the balance, by understanding that creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. But you must keep the balance in check." Tessa nodded, her heart pounding. This was her first true test. Could she maintain the balance? Could she protect the world she had created? Or would the darkness overtake everything? Her hands trembled as she reached out toward the fading stars, trying to pull them back, to reignite the light that was being snuffed out. But the force of the darkness was strong, stronger than anything she had felt before. She had to be strong, too. With a deep breath, Tessa closed her eyes and focused on the energy inside her, on the power of creation that had been granted to her. The stars pulsed at her fingertips, flickering back to life, one by one. Slowly, steadily, the balance was restored. But as the darkness retreated, Tessa knew this was only the beginning. There would be more tests, more challenges. The universe was vast, and she was only just beginning to understand its complexities. And she would face them all no matter the cost. The world around Tessa was still, but the silence was suffocating. She had restored the balance, at least for now. But deep inside her, a gnawing feeling lingered, a sense that the darkness hadn't been entirely banished. It was still there, somewhere, quietly waiting. Her fingers trembled as she held the new world in her grasp, the tiny planet she had nurtured with such care. Its oceans shimmered in the light of her creation, but something in the shadows of the mountains seemed off. "Do you feel it?" Tessa whispered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. The alien, who had been silent up to this point, gave a slight nod. Its eyes glowed faintly in the deepening twilight that surrounded them. The creature was no longer just a guide or mentor. It was a part of her journey, a being whose understanding of the universe was far greater than hers. But it too seemed disturbed by something in the air. "Yes," the alien replied in a voice low and knowing. "The darkness is patient. It is not defeated, merely delayed. But it will come again, and when it does, it will test you in ways you cannot predict." Tessa's gaze shifted towards the horizon, where a storm had begun to brew, a swirling mass of void and shadow creeping into the edges of her newly formed world. It was subtle at first, just a flicker at the corners of her vision, but it was growing. The alien's words echoed in her mind. Creation and destruction are two sides of the same coin. The true battle was not one of power, but of control. She could feel the balance slipping once again, the energy in the air becoming dense, as if reality itself were buckling under the weight of the forces she had awakened. The power she had felt earlier now seemed more like a burden, something fragile that could crumble at any moment. "I need to stop it," Tessa muttered to herself, more out of fear than conviction. But the alien's response was calm, almost reassuring. "You cannot stop it, Tessa, not forever. The darkness exists to keep the balance. It is part of creation. Your challenge is not to fight it, but to understand it." Tessa's eyes widened in confusion. Understand it, but it destroys. How can I understand something like that? The alien shifted slightly, its body glowing brighter as it stepped closer to her. Destruction is not always what it seems. Sometimes it is necessary. Creation cannot exist without destruction, just as light cannot exist without darkness. You, Tessa, must learn to wield both, or you will lose everything. Tessa stared at the swirling darkness on the horizon, her heart pounding. She had thought she could control the universe with her newfound abilities, that her power could shape and protect. But now, she realized there was no such simple answer. The darkness wasn't an enemy to be vanquished. It was a part of the very fabric of existence. Her mind raced as she thought of Earth, of the life she had once known, and the people who had lived on it. It had been so easy to see things in terms of black and white, light and dark, good and evil. But now she understood that those distinctions were mere illusions, fragile constructs designed to make sense of the chaos. The truth was far more complex, and with that realization came the burden of choice. Could she bear the weight of this understanding? Could she navigate the fragile line between creation and destruction without falling into the abyss? "Show me," Tessa whispered. "Show me how to wield both." The alien nodded solemnly, its voice low and steady. "Then we begin. The universe is vast, and you must learn its rules. Only then can you become the creator you were meant to be." Tessa took a deep breath and turned her gaze back toward the swirling storm on the horizon. This was only the beginning. The darkness, the void, was not her enemy, but her teacher. And with the alien beside her, she would face it head on. The days that followed were a blur of cosmic lessons. Tessa learned quickly, absorbing the secrets of the universe as if they had always been inside her, waiting to be unlocked. Under the alien's watchful eye, she began to see the interconnectedness of everything. Creation was not an isolated event. It was part of an endless cycle, a dance between forces far beyond her comprehension. She learned that every star, every planet, every flicker of energy had a purpose. The universe was not chaotic, it was harmonious, a living, breathing organism. Each piece, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, contributed to the greater whole. And yet, the darkness remained, always lurking at the edges of her perception. One night, as she stood at the edge of the world she had created, Tessa felt the pull of the darkness once more. It was stronger now, a gnawing presence that tugged at her very soul. But instead of fear, Tessa felt a strange calm wash over her. She was no longer running from it. She was embracing it. The alien stood beside her, its body glowing softly as it watched her. "Are you ready?" Tessa nodded. "I think I am." With a deep breath, she stepped into the darkness, her hand outstretched. The stars flickered around her, and for a moment, she was weightless, suspended between worlds. The void surrounded her, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. She understood now. She understood the balance. The storm of darkness swirled around her, its edges fracturing and splitting as she reached out with her mind. It was not destruction that she sought, but understanding. The darkness didn't fear her, respected her. And slowly, as she allowed herself to become one with it, the storm began to dissipate. In its place, a new world began to take shape, a world where both creation and destruction could coexist in perfect harmony. Stars and shadows danced together, light and darkness intertwined in a way that Tessa had never imagined possible. The universe was vast, and it was beautiful in its complexity. As she stood there, her hands glowing with the energy of the cosmos, Tessa realized that her journey was far from over. She had learned to wield the forces of creation and destruction, but there was still so much to discover. The universe was full of mysteries, full of untold stories waiting to be written. And with the alien beside her, she was ready to write them.